Hi YouTube, we haven't done this in a while. This is where I used to shoot the majority of my first videos before I started doing stuff out in the yard. So I had said I was going to do this, not necessarily to you guys, but I said I was going to. And then I got a response to a comment, and I pinned it to my Remember When Cold Steel made quality knives. Which that video is, it's got like 700 views. It's not massive or anything, but the other one has got like 50,000 views almost, which is the one that caused the most controversy. So I don't want you guys to think that this is damage control and I'm restating any of my beliefs, because I'm not. But Mr. Lynn Thompson did send a comment saying that he did not believe, he didn't agree with my statements, which is fine. That's his opinion, my channel, my opinion. But I responded back to him and let him know that maybe I was a little bit remiss in stating the fact that the issues that cold steel knives, that I find in cold steel knives, are not limited to cold steel knives. It just so happened that at the time where I did the first video, I had gotten a cold steel knife in. So there's that. But what I wanted to do is, and I've got several cold steels that I'm going to do this on because these are the ones that I have that I keep. But the one that when I think of a knife that I think is pretty close to being perfect, this is the one that I think of. This was a Father's Day present from my father. This is the Cold Steel Tuff Lite. And I'm not gonna lie to you, everything about this little knife is just about perfect. Just about. And you can see it's been carried, it gets gunk and stuff on it, and it's beat up and got some pocket wear, and it gets used a lot, it gets resharpened. It spends a lot of time at my workbench because it's just pretty good for using for cutting tape, for doing, cutting boxes and things like that is out there. These, when they first came out, were at the time I think the smallest knife with a triad lock. I think the Tuff Lite Mini, they're pretty much the same size, just the blade size a little bit smaller in the Tuff Lite Mini. But these were done in AUSA 8, and you've heard me say that Cold Steel's AUSA 8 by far was better than AUSA 8 I had in other knives. SOG knives, their AUSA 8, I just I couldn't stand it. I don't have any SOG knives anymore because quality issues. Their knives, I could not keep them to hold an edge. The AUSA 8 that they used, Cold Steel's AUSA 8, I think they run it a little bit harder. And it's pretty awesome. I like Cold Steel's AUSA 8. I really do. I don't necessarily have to have a super steel. I don't necessarily need an M390 blade or 20 CV. Basically the same thing. Woo, that was close. That knife was wide open and fell and landed right on my thumb like that. But like I said, don't necessarily need a super steel blade. I mentioned in a comment to someone, and I mentioned it in my other video, that the super steels, I'm not saying that they need to replace some of the more conventional steels, the older steels. 440C is still a very viable knife option. But this knife, it's done in their, I believe it's Grivery, but it's a hard plastic handle. This knife does have the triad lock, and if you guys don't know by now what a triad lock is, if you look in there, that pin sits in between the mainspring and the back of the blade, and what it's designed to do is when you're pushing down, it prevents the blade from actually pushing on the lock spring and deforming the lock spring. And so what you get is when you're pushing down, and that force that normally would wind up being transferred from the blade into the the main lock spring, the mainspring on the back, and then the lock up in that notch, then that force that's being applied is accepted by this, as opposed to the actual lock, the tooth of that. And if you look, triad locks have a large travel for that massive tooth that drops down into that notch or key or whatever you want to call it. So when you're pushing this way, it's accepting force, and when you're pushing, when it's going this way, if there's any force the other direction, that pin takes that, and it's not actually deforming the lock interface as much, and it makes it extremely strong. I mean, to get one of these to fail is by far, it would be a feat. I don't know, honestly, what it would take. I didn't look it up to see what this one will hold, but I've seen it hold like a lot of weight. I don't remember what it was. These two little, if you look, I mean, it's little. It is small. It's like right about 4 inches closed. But when you open it, you wind up with 2 nice deep choils for your fingers. And then it's nice and round. It's almost a half moon shape, and it sits right in your hand. And you got some jimping on the spine. The hole is a lot like a Strider hole, but it's pretty well smoothed. Takes a crazy, stupid sharp edge. Let's see if it's still not quite shaving sharp for like if I wanted to lather up and shave with it, but it's still really sharp. This knife gets a lot of use. This knife is the knife that usually is out there that's breaking down cardboard boxes. I haven't sharpened this for a while, so I mean, it's still pretty sharp. It's might not be phone book paper, but it's definitely printer paper sharp, and has held that edge fairly well. This one actually has a sharpening notch pretty much in the correct location. It's not a very big notch. I would open it up a little if it wasn't for the fact that I would lose a little bit of blade length. What happens when you're trying to sharpen is, and you're not going to really be able to see, I can see it looking at it from this direction, but you wind up getting, on these knives when you sharpen them, you wind up getting a high spot here because you just can't quite get all the way back. The pocket clip, nice pocket clip. It's pretty much the same pocket clip that Cold Steel uses on most of on their knives, but it's the way it's cut out. It drops down in, and it basically lines directly up with where your finger will be after it's in that little notch in that choil. So your finger basically lays in it like that and then curls around, and it not at all a hot spot. I've cut with this a lot and never had issues with feeling a hot spot or anything in there. They are hollow ground from, yeah, you can kind of see there where it gets high up. They're hollow ground, so I mean, really, the way they cut and cut out material is really, really nice. But as far as like a little work knife that you could carry inconspicuous, this is a knife that wound up in pockets of shorts a lot because it is so light. And there's a lot of times it will ride in my hip pocket. It rides really well in your hip pocket, so that you've just got a little knife back there. It is not set up for tip up carry, which is my preference if you really want to know the truth. There's a lot of Cold Steel knives that are not. This one is set for tip up. This one's set for tip down carry, and you don't have an option for tip up carry, but you do have an option for left-handed carry if you wanted it. So mine's set up for right-hand carry, but if you wanted to carry this left-handed, just flip it. And the nice thing is the pocket clip goes either way. Unlike some of the Cold Steel knives, this one came with a second pocket clip because of the way it's curved. So the pivot is set with Torx, and then the other side of it is underneath the pocket clip. So you're covering your pivot on one side with your pocket clip. big hole for a lanyard, really big lanyard hole. I've actually carried this, I've taken the pocket clip clear off of this and carried this as a traditional style pocket knife, because it's not that big that it can't ride in a pair of pants in the pocket comfortably. So yeah, I mean, all in all, this knife is one that they got it right. They got it really right. And there's a lot of cold steel knives that get it right. They really do. I don't want you guys to think that I'm saying that Cold Steel is not a good company. They do good work. They do. The minor issues are things that, the small issues that bother me are, you know, the accountability thing of, and they can disagree with me if they want, that's fine. But the accountability of how things are being done. Now, in Mr. Thompson's reply, he told me that their knives are hand sharpened, and that can lead to some of the discrepancy on it. That's fine. I can understand when you're producing that many knives and they're all being hand sharpened on. I can understand that there's going to be some here and there, you know, but what I was saying is, it's not just me that's mentioned this. There's a lot of people in the comments that have mentioned that, yep, mine came misground, I had to resharpen it, or it didn't come sharp. Now, that one I would disagree with. I've never seen a cold steel knife not come sharp. They always come wicked, stupid sharp. But that misgrind and having it at a different angle, if the angles don't marry up, like I said before, and it's at an angle, it's just going to want to push that edge over and it won't stay sharp as long, which is my major contention. And sometimes the angle for the edge geometry. Now, this one being hollow ground, wow, did it come. It was so sharp when it came. And there was no issue with the grind on this one. Yeah, it's pretty easy to take apart if you want to. I don't necessarily recommend taking apart a triad lock unless you're kind of experienced at taking it apart, because you can kind of screw things up. It's one of the small ones like this, it's not as bad. Something like this where there's a lot, I mean, there is a lot of tension. You can see how high that is, and that's a long mainspring that's under pressure, and it would be difficult. I am going to do a review of this one. I really love this knife. I am going to do a review of this one soon, but this was about this knife. Like I said, XHP, their new knives are coming in XHP. I'm not a fan of XHP, but it's a better steel than AUSA 8 for a lot of people. I personally prefer, if I'm going to get a cold steel knife, because it's going to be a hard use knife. It sounds funny to say, but I would rather have something that's maybe a little bit softer than the XHP, because I know it's going to get dull, and then this is easier for me just to quickly lay an edge back up on. It doesn't take as much work as XHP. XHP takes a while to get sharp. It really does. Like I said, I'm not the one that said that it takes a garbage edge and holds it forever, but XHP, if you can get it, if you know what you're doing, you can get it really, really razor sharp. I never liked the edge that I got with it. It just never felt as refined as something like M390 or 20CV. And I 100% think that it's the grain structure. I think it's the grain structure, larger carbides in that steel than there are in some of the newer steels. So yeah, just to make sure that you guys didn't think that I'm bashing cold steel knives 100%. They are, for the price point for this knife, I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up while we're talking. They're not that expensive, and this was a gift at least 3 or 4 years ago for Father's Day from my father. Let me look here, and I'll tell you. Cold steel. Tuff. Yeah, it's my internet's slow right now. It's really a awesome knife for work, especially with this nice wear and cliff style blade, really nice and straight. With the it's still got enough point for piercing. If it's kind of small for self-defense, but I believe that if you needed to, this would lay a wicked, because it's small enough to be inconspicuous, but still got enough blade and enough purchase to really, if you needed to, in a situation for self-defense, use it for that purpose. Let's see. As far as negatives on this one, like I said, the only one I can really come up with is that I like tip-up carry. And this one doesn't allow me that option. That is basically where we're at. I mean, would I like it to have bushings that would last a little longer? Yeah, but I haven't worn the bushings out on this one. This one is not as... it's not as large, so there's not as much damage being done, I guess. But it's getting to where it's not as smooth as it was when I got it, and I keep it lubricated and oiled and taken care of, but it's still... So the Tuff Lite plain edge folding knife right now on Amazon is $27.61. That's a sub $30 knife that ranks up there in my book, so that you guys know. It ranks up there with some of my $400 knives. So, Mr. Lynn Thompson, I am not strictly bashing Cold Steel. Benchmade. Benchmade knives come... I don't like Benchmade knives. I don't. I would take a Cold Steel over a Benchmade 9 out of 10 times. The Osborne, some of those Osbornes are the only ones that would be the exception to that. I don't like Benchmade knives. They're fixed blade knives. Like some of their neck knife that they have that's specifically for hand-to-hand combat. That one's an awesome knife, but I don't like Benchmade knives. SOG knives. I don't like SOG knives, which would be, I would put them in about the same bracket as Cold Steel. Much rather have a Cold Steel than a SOG. Because the quality issues that I'm talking about for major production companies are the same standard across. It's frustrating when you get things in and then you would have to call customer service. I mean, now for me, I can rectify the situation myself, but you get a knife with a misgrind and it won't stay sharp, and then you try, and then there's more work that you've got to throw into that to get it sharp. So, yeah, no, I really, truly love this knife. And I told you I would never get rid of this one. So there are Cold Steel knives that I do like, and I've got to where I kind of like that Tuff Lite. It's just, it's never gonna hold up. I don't think that knife will hold up as well as this one does, because it's already got that blade play in it. And like I said, it's a long blade on a plastic handle with a nylon washer, and I did a lot of work sharpening it, and then I used it, and it's gotten some torsion on it, and to take that blade play out, I don't know what I would have to do, but if I tighten the pivot on it, it does not deploy the way I want it to, like it did when I first got it. So that's all I was saying about the Tuff Lite, or the Tuff Lite. My friend Jason has a Tuff Lite with I think they're aluminum handles. It's awesome. It's an awesome knife, because it's a little bit better construction. And Cold Steel has tiers of knives that go up, but I have had people tell me that like some of their higher tier, they're more expensive knives, the new ones that they make, that are like the Demco versions of them that are a lot more expensive. They've had some of the same issues with the sharpening and the grind and things like that. So I'm not the only one that sees it. I do not mean to offend anyone with this. This video is at 20 minutes. But yeah, there's going to be a couple Cold Steel reviews coming, because I never sat down and actually did a review of any of my Cold Steel knives. Awesome knife. So you guys have a good evening. Once again, not saying like and subscribe. I do like it when people subscribe. It's awesome. It's cool. I get an email and I'm like, ooh, somebody subscribed and stuff like that. But I really would like to see the Patreon start to take off. So just go to Patreon, find me, Michael Emler. It's the same as my YouTube channel. And just, if you want to give $1 or $2, that's fine. If not, share it and see if somebody else does. All right, you guys, 20 minutes. I need to cut this video. You guys take it easy. I'll talk to you later.